welcome to the BiG Scuba Podcast. My name is Ian, and with me online is...
Hello, my name is Gemma. Welcome to the BiG Scuba Podcast.
So, Gemma, these episodes are sponsored by Debt90. They are beyond technical and also sports financial services for your insurance. So go there and make a quote. Adverts coming up soon. So this is a bit of a special. We've got a bit of a special, Gemma. This is our last breath special.
This is no, this is episode 198. In the last few days, we went down to London. We were invited to a screening of the film Last Breath that is coming out. Its first release is being in the US, and then it's coming to the UK for release. So we got preferential screening, which was great, and we really enjoyed the film. Very gripping. We have seen the BBC documentary.
It was a screening for the journalists, wasn't it?
Yeah, the local journalists.
Somehow they let us in.
We're very privileged. See, we're important people.
How did we get in?
Yeah, so we have seen the BBC documentary of the Last Breath. We've interviewed the show, the person that it's about, Chris Lemons, who obviously found himself in a tricky situation at the bottom of the North Sea in 2012. But yeah, it's a
tricky situation.
But he got back. So, but yeah, it's great to see that a film has been produced. And it kind of, well, we really felt that it really grips the viewer. You have some understanding of the diving element of it and the actual saturation side of things.
Yeah. And it really goes into some of the detail, but obviously it's Hollywood, so it kind of pads out a bit more than the next, because it's making a film for everybody. It's not just for divers, remember. So you divers out there, don't go and analyze and go, oh, that ain't happening and things like that. You know, it's a film. It's for everyone, you know,
yes,
to enjoy.
Based on a true story, but there is some poetic license. Yes,
there is.
Yeah.
So we spoke to we just literally just come off the Zoom from chatting to Alex Parkinson, who's the director. He's done other films, and Emmy Awards, Emmy nominated, and also David Brooks, who's the writer and producer as well.
Yes. Yeah. So it's great to have some time with them. So we put a few questions to them. Our interview will follow shortly, and just hear about the process of filming, casting, and the actual process, filming it in the dark at night in an 11-meter pool in Malta.
Yeah, the incident actually happened in 2012, didn't it? We spoke to Chris
2023,
June 2023, we spoke to Chris. So as Gemma said earlier, this be following afterwards. So if you've not heard his story, this will be following.
Yes, yeah. So we have a conversation with Alex and David, and then we'll go straight into our previous interview with the real life person, Chris Lemons.
Yeah. So should we do it now?
Yep. So this is episode 198. Enjoy our conversation. Hi, so we're Gemma and Ian from the BiG Scuba Podcast, and we chat to divers and all people connected to the underwater world, to do with diving and filmmaking, even astronauts we've spoken to. So we're now talking to you.
Great. Great. Lovely. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So we saw the film last Wednesday evening and thought it was amazing. Really great.
Yeah, really good.
Great.
Yeah.
You saw it on the big screen, did you?
Pardon?
You saw it on the big screen. You saw it in a cinema.
No, we actually saw it in a hotel mini cinema, wasn't it? 47-seater. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was very gripping. We have seen the documentary, the BBC documentary as well. So it complemented that, amazingly well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So what did you think when you were approached to produce the film?
Well, I mean, I basically sort of developed it from scratch, meaning that we saw the documentary and thought that could be a great film, and so there was a process really of then obviously brought Alex on. The documentary for me is so cinematic, and so even though Alex hadn't made a narrative feature film before, I think when you look at the documentary, you go, okay, that's a guy who understands. He's a filmmaker on every level, and so that was really the process for me. Was once Alex and I then started working on the script together, that became even more apparent, because I think that he obviously knew the world so intimately, and as a producer and as a co-writer on this, it was so exciting because there were elements that didn't even make it into the documentary that Alex, once we started talking, said, well, this could be interesting, this could be, and as we started to round out this world, ultimately it was all about, I mean, Alex's vision was based on, look, the true story is so brilliant, that's what we need to kind of focus on. But obviously there are always areas when you're making that transition to narrative where you have to take some kind of license. And I mean, Alex, you can speak to kind of what that process was like for you.
Well, yeah, obviously a bit of a license with obviously the helium voices for one is an example, and it's about finding those things about where you don't want to lose your audience. I mean, the helium voices, if we're going to be strictly accurate, obviously they should be talking of helium voices.
Yeah.
But in terms of drama, it's just not going to help at all, is it? And for most people who don't know that world intimately, they wouldn't know anyway. So in terms of dramatic license, but there's a few scenes as well where I would describe it as an extension of truth, in the sense of where these things very nearly happened, but they didn't. But they're in that world of what was going on. So an example of that would be when Craig takes control of the ROV and he tries to pick Chris up. Now, what happened in reality was that he and the ROV pilot had a long discussion about, look, I want to take the controls. I think we should pick him up and bring him back to the Bell. But that didn't happen in the end. And that was in the documentary at one point, but then taken out. But the thing is that to show the desperation that Craig was going through and how he's going to try and do anything to try and save Chris at this point, it seemed like, as an example of where it's an extension of truth, it's the perfect way of showing Craig's interior mind without him having to explain it. So it's little things like that which were crucial, which are in the world of what was going on, so it feels completely bedded in with what's going on, but a bit of license has been done because it gives you that window into what these characters are going through.
And ultimately, I think creates hopefully really compelling action set pieces, right?
Well, yes.
We had a story that we knew was incredibly emotionally affecting, with great characters, but you also want to deliver a really thrilling cinematic experience. And so that was the challenge for us, is, finding the ways to do that in an organic way. So,
and that definitely comes across in the film. Yeah, it's gripping.
Right.
Yeah, that is. And
I was just going to say that was the interesting thing with working with you on the script, David, was that idea about where the documentary, obviously you've got talking heads with people who tell you what's going on and what you're looking at, and et cetera, and that dial does that, and blah, 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 and all those kind of things. But in the feature, you can't do that. It's be unbelievably clunky if they're sort of going through things like that. So it's a really intellectually fulfilling process to find ways of immersing the audience in this world. They understand it to some degree, and it introduces them to this world, but done, as to use one of your words, David, in an organic way, where it feels part of the story, part of the action, and the audience are kind of picking it up. I'm trying to avoid the word osmosis, but I'm going to use it. They pick it up by osmosis, so they understand the world around them as well. So that was the script level was really exciting to find ways of doing that, as well as building up the drama as well. So they all work hand in hand in that sense.
Yeah. And how long did this? Sorry.
Yeah.
How long did the script actually take to put together before you started in February 2023?
That's one of those, you start to things get a bit blurry. If I, the movies take a long time. The truth is I think for me, from, when we first optioned the documentary to the film now coming out, has been I guess, over 3 years or something like that, you know, which is actually not that long for a movie. So, but I think in terms of, yeah, I mean, for us kind of really working on the script together, and, you know, it was obviously, you know, months, you know, in advance. And I think we continued also, though, to tweak the script during pre-production. I mean, you know, really, I think similar to, I'm not a diver myself, but from obviously the time I've now spent, so much of it's about preparation, right? If you've got a plan and you execute that plan, then hopefully things go well. And filmmaking is no different. And so we had a long pre-production period, which was really about, you know, I think Alex and I constantly going and sort of scrutinizing the script. And as we're starting to build sets, and as we're starting to go through all these processes of casting, all the rest of it, you just start to refine and refine and refine, and hopefully get to that point where on the day it just feels, you know, exactly as the way it should be. So that was kind of part of the process, I suppose.
And I think you blocked it from your memory now, David. There were a few overnight rewrites while filming as well. Where,
of course, oh no, of course, yeah.
But that drove the first AD mad. But it was all. But to speak to your point, David, it's all for the reason of scrutinizing it and then realizing when you get onto a set and you're blocking through a certain scene and thinking this doesn't quite work for whatever reason, and then just changing things slightly to make it work, and it both for story terms, but also often for authenticity terms as well. And so that was really exciting about constantly scrutinizing it as well. It wasn't just letting it go, it was always at the forefront of our minds to make it the best it could be at every single point. And that was really, and hopefully that comes through in what you see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because Alex, are you a diver yourself?
I got my PADI years ago in the Red Sea, but I have a rather annoying ear that means that when I go down to depth, it's like an ice pick in my head.
Oh.
So I kind of persevered to get the PADI because I wanted to get the PADI, but then after that, I just snorkel after that.
Because I can imagine it's quite hard for you both to, you know, you're trying to recreate a depth of 100 meters in, what's the tank, 11 meters deep.
11 meters.
And, you know, and it's quite, obviously the obvious difference. And it comes over in the film when you watch it, you know, that depth does come through. With when they're showing the machine, the tank and objects in the water, you can see there's, you know, it does feel deep. There's a depth to it. So I think that comes over really well.
I think the crucial thing to that about making it feel that depth is the way that keeping it in that real world as well, because a lot of underwater films, not all, but some, have that kind of, there's a temptation to show the expanse of the seabed and show that sort of unreal, often blue landscape going to the distance.
Yeah.
But really keen about, like, let's just keep it how it really would be underwater, where you use practical lights, all you see is from the practical lights, and that immediately gives you that sense of that weight of water on you, and that sense as well, the way it goes off into the black, this allows you to, if the danger is all around you and you can feel it around you, this unknown. And that was a crucial thing to the whole look underwater, to have that. I think that's what you feel in the water there. Sorry, David.
No, sorry, I was just going to add, I mean, the other thing is that, yes, although we were primarily, you know, we built obviously this big set underwater in a, I mean, the tank that we built it in is about 100 meters in circumference and as you say, 11 meters deep. 11 meters is still 11 meters. It's obviously not, you know, 100 meters, but it's still, it required, you know, and the guys are using real, you know, basically a real saturation diving system, right? So it was very much, I mean, you know, the dive team, I mean, were incredible on this, and you know, safety was obviously the most important thing, and those safety concerns were real. You know, everyone had to really be on the top of their game. The actors are doing safety stops. It's not the kind of thing where someone freaks out and they just pop up to the top quickly. So I think the actors really, I mean, they went through some extensive training, and they've just really bought into the process and were so enthusiastic about it. And so that made that element of it, I think, hopefully come across in it added to the realism, because they were really doing it. You know, they weren't doing it, but they were down there, and they were down there for hours at a time.
And I think that gets lost sometimes in filming, that the behind the scenes work and the safety side, it's not always evident to the public, because unless you're a diver, you wouldn't appreciate all that as what goes on. In comparison, our dive centres, Paul, is 3 meters, and our local inland dive and quarry, which is like the national quarry in the UK, Stoney Cove, the biggest part of the training side of that is only 6 meters deep. So it's quite a bit of depth there. How do you communicate with your cameramen?
Well, it is through water speaker. So it'd be so the dive Abby, the dive supervisor, she would be the common point of contact. So you would know this, but some people may not. You only want one voice in the water. You don't want lots of competing voices. So there's a discipline in that, obviously, from all of us, including me, to her, communicating to her. So obviously Ian Seabrook, the underwater DP, he could hear that, but he likes to work by not having a microphone. So he had a system of shaking the camera if he agrees with, if he disagrees with something, or
hand signals, all kinds of
And he had a shorthand for all of it, so you kind of get used to that. And also, as well, with communicating with people underwater, you have to be very precise about what you're saying, and you've got to be very exact and precise. So the sort of what am I trying to say? The instructions and things to be done for all the safety divers, and notes from me to the actors, all this kind of stuff had to be very, very short and precise as well, to keep things moving along.
And what length of time were the guys in the water for? How many hours were your sort of sets filming?
I mean, overall, it's 5 to 6 hours a night, but it wasn't constant. They would, it just depends, because it's a cumulative thing. So they'd be down for a long time at one point, and then have a safety stop and come up for a bit, and have shorter times as you go on. But overall, it's about 5 or 6 hours a night.
Yeah, it's a long time. Yeah,
and we're shooting. That all the diving work was done at night as well. So we're doing it's also night shoots on top of it, because the tank is so big, it's too big to kind of black out, or something that we would do if we were shooting in a smaller stage or something. So all of that work was done at night. So there's that added element of everyone's on nights for about a month straight to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, and it's good that the actors had that experience of being scuba divers as well, prior to sort of their more intense sessions, getting to know about the saturation side.
The thing I love is that when we cast Finn in the role, who plays Chris Lemons, Finn Cole, he was about to go on a dive trip to Egypt, right, Alex? And so kind of a great, we're like, well, you had to cancel that trip, but then you get to go on this other really cool dive trip. So.
I'm presuming Woody wasn't a diver, or isn't a diver?
I don't know whether he dives or not, but he didn't dive in the film, so
no.
He didn't need to. No.
Yeah. No. Well, it's really exciting to see how it'll perform when it comes out in America, and we're really excited when it comes out in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Have you got the release date for UK of the 14th of March?
14th.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. So we'll be watching it. With keen interest. So.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you so much.
Very good talking to you both.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on the BiG Scuba Podcast.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, bye.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Chris Lemons. I am or was certainly a commercial saturation diver, now a commercial diving supervisor, and I'm here on the BiG Scuba Podcast with great pleasure to talk about what I do for a living, and also probably, I suspect, to detail incidents or details of an incident which happened to me back in 2012. Where I got left on the bottom of the North Sea with nothing to breathe, I guess.
And thank goodness you made it back. That's all we've got to say.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it? Is that are we done?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, and goodbye. No, not yet. We've got questions. We've got questions for you. So,
are you okay if we put a few visuals up once, because we always put a couple of trailers up prior to the podcast coming up, so are you all right?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Whatever needs to do. No worries.
Nice one. Excellent.
Well, thanks for joining us. That's really good. Have you listened to any of the podcasts?
I'm sorry, I haven't. I will. And I've watched a few clips on YouTube. I have. Sorry, that's a complete lie. I did watch a few the other day. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sometimes it's a good thing not listening, because then, it's all an element of surprise.
Absolutely, yeah. But I haven't listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us anyway.
Thank you very much for joining us. We know you're busy, and you get asked for media appearances and things like that all the time. So, we appreciate you coming on and joining us for this evening.
Pleasure,
yeah. We always ask, and it's always good to get people's background with our guests, because we can't assume that everyone has heard and about your story, and so. Could we ask you, for starters, nice easy one, how did you get into diving? Who got you into diving?
Yeah, so I get asked this quite a lot, and I wish I had a better answer, to be honest, a more romantic one anyway. But because if you have seen the film, my sort of colleagues Dave and Duncan, they both got into diving or commercial diving anyway, through a love of it. Dave I think he was a scuba diving instructor out in Thailand, and Duncan grew up sort of slightly older generation watching Jacques Cousteau and had this love of the underwater world, and they both found a way, I guess, to make their passion their vocation, if you like. But that really unfortunately wasn't really the case for me. I was never really a diver before I became a commercial diver, strangely. I was just a young man in my sort of very early 20s, not really too sure what to do with my life, I think, and a bit lost. And excuse me, I just got the opportunity to work as a summer job, really, just to earn a bit of pocket money on the back deck of a DSV, which is a dive support vessel. And I used to literally work outside and operate the cranes and things, and send things down to the divers on the seabed. And for me, that was just it was just an eye-opening moment, really. That was something I've sort of learned better since, but it seemed quite romantic what they were doing. It seemed exciting and interesting. And I think I decided there and then that that's what I wanted to. They probably turned up on the quayside with better cars than me as well. That probably helped. But it was definitely part of me that thought, well, that was good. And for me, that sort of gave me purpose and direction in life, really. And it was it started very quickly. That's what I wanted to do, and sort of followed through from there. Yeah. So I didn't come from a diving background particularly, really. It was just that it's always been a vocation for me. Yeah.
And if you hadn't gone into diving, what do you think you would have done?
Well, that's a very good question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I had loftier ambitions when I was younger. I wanted to be, doctor or journalist or something like that. I think
I often think of these things,
but yeah.
That we're kind of channeled somewhere. Some might call it fate. Some may believe in religion and all that, and say, well, these things come about for a certain reason. And obviously, you had a chance to do the summer job, and off you went, and your life, and carried on, followed that journey.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure about any of that, but what I do count myself is extremely lucky. Lucky to have found a job that I ended up really loving, but mostly lucky. I mean, it's you feel for youngsters if they don't have direction in life. It's a tough thing, isn't it? It's a big world. It's I find life was far easier once I had a goal, if you like, and I had a clear direction of what I needed to do to get there. So yeah. But I count myself very lucky. I don't know, I'm not quite sure how my life would have taken out that. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So what was the training like? Was it quite arduous, or did you just throw yourself into it and get it done?
Yeah, I would never call it arduous. No, it was. It's a strange one, really. You kind of do it all in one go. I think so. You start off training to be an air diver, really, so literally breathing air, as you well know. So I think you do a professional scuba diving qualification to start with, and then I did my training in Dunoon in Scotland at the Professional Diving Academy, and you do your air course. I think it lasts about 10 or 11 weeks or something like that at the time, and it was great. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, really. I didn't find it massively arduous. It's you're really learning the skills to breathe underwater, which it's not that hard, really, is at the end of the day. The real learning curve came once I got on the job. But in terms of the actual initial training, it was more saving the money to be able to pay for it. I think that was the difficult bit. The actual course itself was just 10 really good fun weeks in Dunoon with a good bunch of people. So it was okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's not a particularly cheap course, is it, to learn, for anyone's thinking about learning?
Yeah, it's an investment. It's I couldn't tell you what it is right now, but it's it's certainly well over £10,000.
Yeah.
15, I couldn't tell you right now, but yeah, it's not cheap. I ended up living in Dunoon for a little bit afterwards, and we used to call it the Dream Factory to some extent, because it was, there were a lot of people spend a lot of money to do that course or something similar somewhere else, and quite frankly don't ever work in commercial diving again. I think from the course I did, maybe 3 of us sort of actually saw it through out of 12, if you like. So it's a big investment. I certainly one I couldn't have afforded to have made without the security of, I was reasonably confident I would get work at the other end, purely because I already worked in the industry, really. So I kind of, I worked on deck for a few years, and got pushed that way, really, to go and take my air diving course. So I had confidence that I could sort of, pay the money back through getting the work, I guess. So I was lucky, really, again. But yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people who go and I'm sure don't quite make it, and not necessarily because they're not any good, but it's a bit sort of, it's an industry where you need to get through the door, really. And, once you're in it, it's not that bad. But yeah, so yeah, it was lucky again, really.
Yeah. And do you see many women doing commercial diving?
Not a lot, nowhere near as many as there should be. You're absolutely right. There are quite a few air divers, and quite a few in the States. In France, I've got 2 or 3 female friends who work particularly in civils diving, so inshore diving. Yeah, we have offshore, not so much. You do see some, but in terms of saturation diving, almost none. I think there are a couple in the US, I believe. I mean, we'll come to the incident in a bit, but one sort of side story from that was that the standby diver that day was a female diver called Dorota, a Polish girl, who had air dived with us offshore, and it was just fun, fantastic. Had she 100% had she been a man, she fully deserved the opportunity to go into SAT, and she was sort of in the standby diver role on the ship is almost a precursor to going in. It's like something you do, waiting for your opportunity, really. And then the accident happened, and they sort of decided that we were having a lot of debate as to how we would manage the logistics of her living in the chamber. Really, it was more than because I'm sure we'll come to that. We live in these very close confines for a month at a time, so privacy is a big issue, and and people were sort of worried that their wives at home would be worried about having a female in there, all of which was nonsense, of course. It not only could it completely be circumnavigated, and we could have done things to protect her privacy, but also we had to. That was our that was the right and proper thing to do, and she deserved her chance, and it had to be accommodated. So yeah, but then they sort of, when you've seen the film, Dave sort of drags me back. They took the decision that she wouldn't have been strong enough to do that, which for starters was nonsense, because she was a very fit girl, and if that's a prerequisite, I think 90% of my colleagues would get the sack, because most of them wouldn't have managed either, be fit enough or strong enough, so yeah, it's very sad. But yeah, so nowhere near enough. It's something we do very badly in the offshore industry generally, not just in diving. There's a real lopsided, it's a very much male dominated industry, and I don't say that with any pride. It's the facts that need to be addressed.
But it's not a industry that I guess it's not going to attract loads, I guess, because there's really tough conditions, isn't it?
No, I think that'd be very patronizing to suggest that tough conditions are putting it off. I think it's more the I don't really know. I think it's just he's got a macho side to it, which is completely necessary. But I think it's maybe the practicalities will be the only argument you could make, that as to why we don't have enough. We have lots of female engineers, and so it's it's definitely possible. But it is a life where you are away for a month at a time, and that's not conducive, I guess, to looking after kids and having a family. And but I manage. It just needs to be addressed, really. So yeah, there's no real. I don't think I would never sit here and say there's a good reason or excuse. It's just quite frankly not good enough.
Yeah. So there you go, women listening out there.
Get in there.
Yeah. So saturation diving, for people listening, they might need a little bit of a explanation of what it means.
Yeah. Well, it's just really a method of diving deeper, really, isn't it? I mean, you guys are all divers, aren't you? I'm sure most of your listeners are as well. So you're aware that when you go diving, obviously you pay a penalty in terms of the inert gases that you absorb, and we undergo decompression stops, don't we, to sort of avoid that. But so I work you know, typically in the North Sea, you're working at maybe 100 meters. That would be your average, maybe a little bit less. But you can work as deep as 150 in the North Sea, up in the northern section. So, and also we don't go down the bottom for 30 minutes. We work 6 hours at a time on the seabed.
Wow.
So, you know, I think if you go down to something like, 90 meters and you do 6 hours, I think that the associated decompression stops would take something like 5 days, I think, something like that. So obviously that's not practical on a daily basis. You can't obviously have a diver hanging on a shot line for 5 days. You know, he's going to get hungry and thirsty. And also, you know, from a commercial perspective, we operate 24 hours a day, so you can't really have divers, you know, constantly decompressing. So yeah, saturation diving really is just a method of circumnavigating that, really, by basically doing one long dive. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And that's achieved by the use of compression chambers, so which you'd see on a lot of scuba diving sites, I hope, that you would use for, you know, perhaps medicinal reasons, you know, to mend something. But yeah, for us, it's the place that the divers live. So on day one, you go into the chamber, you close the door. 12 of us normally go in, so it's four teams of 3. And those chambers are compressed down to an equivalent working depth. So if we're going to be working at 100 meters, as an example, the chambers would probably be compressed down to about 90 meters. That'd probably take maybe an hour or two, maybe, just to do it slowly. There's no real restriction to blowing people down, apart from HPNS, like high pressure nervous syndrome, I think they call it. But so generally, it's just a steady press down to 90 meters.
What about your ears and that? If you're struggling to equalize with your ears, as that's taking it down?
Yeah, it's much easier. Well, you probably should be diving. That's probably your first problem, you know. But then, secondly, it's much easier, I find, to equalize your ears in a chamber than it is in the water. And if you've done any chamber dives at all, but it's a lot easier because you can just hold your nose.
I did. A few years ago, I did the chamber up in Yorkshire, and we did a hard hat dive as well. And I was fine, and he was taking us down. I forget now, maybe 35, maybe 40. Yeah. And I struggled to equalize after about 20 to 25, and didn't have a cold or anything, but I did struggle to. In fact, I had bail after about 30 meters.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if it's a problem, you can always stop the compression. It's never an issue, really. You know, you couldn't come out. I've never ever seen it, you know. Yeah, I mean, obviously you get a full medical before you're going in, so, you know, hopefully any sort of colds will be ironed out, and you should certainly be declaring those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, it's the same as, you know, exactly the same as going down in that chamber that day. It's, you know, you can put a stop to it and come out of it. But yeah.
So your voice, you get the high pitched voice.
Yeah. So another part, absolutely right. Yes, another part of it is that obviously you know, your nitrogen narcosis is obviously a problem at that kind of depth, so that's circumnavigated by breathing heliox. So we breathe helium oxygen mix, which gives you that stupid voice. But it's often more than that. I think when you get compressed down, because you breathe in heliox at, you know, 10 meters, you're quite intelligible, but you go down to 100 and very, very difficult to understand people. I think your vocal cords must get constricted or restricted a bit as well, you know. So I don't know, it changes the tone as it comes out, but it's a real pain.
So that kind of high pitch, like we hear when, you know, people take helium balloons, that stays with you right through your whole saturations. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's you don't really notice when you're in there, strangely. It's only when you come out, because literally you're sort of you know, you can count sort of down from 10 as you're getting out of the chamber, and you have a squeaky voice through to 5, and as soon as you step outside, it goes. What I find is, you know, you come out in your team of 3, you know, you might have only just met them as you go in, you know, and you come out having spent a month in very intimate confines with people. Bloody hell, you're a Scouser. Yeah. You just don't hear the accent, you know. It's
amazing though, because 12 people get forced into a tube to have to get on with each other for a whole month.
Yeah, I think that's the skill of the job. I mean, the diving, quite frankly, is the easy bit. It's the release every day, you know, that you get out and stretch your legs and do something. But yeah, the real difficulty in the job probably is exactly that: is living in very close confines with you know, other people and people you might not necessarily get on with, you know, and you know, living with anybody in those kind of confines is quite hard, isn't it? But
so typically, how big's the chamber?
They vary a bit, but yeah, I would say typical one is maybe just under 2 meters high or circumference. So, I can't quite stand up in them normally. And then lengthwise, maybe 8 meters, 9 meters long.
Gosh,
wow,
Capsule really. So you got, they normally it varies, but some are what we call 3-men chambers, or some are 6. So you might have six people living in there, and bunks right next to each other. You're probably sleeping maybe to 12 inches apart, and then you have a little seating area with a sort of picnic table almost, and a couple of benches, and that's it. That really is your world for 28 days in a row. We're sort of limited legally to 28 days in UK waters anyway. And there are a series of these linked together, so you have a sort of wet pot where the diving bell comes onto as well, and you can have a shower in there, and maybe stretch and do a few press ups or something, but there's not much yet. As I said, that's probably the skill of the job, is living in there. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And I think even to like tune your mind into being in that position in over a month is incredible, mentally as well.
Yeah. I think that's the hard bit. It's it's not just being psychologically able to live in that, you obviously don't want to be claustrophobic or anything like that, but it's more the fact that there's no escape. The minute that door is shut and you are blown down to 100 meters, those 5 days of decompression that we mentioned earlier, they can't be circumnavigated. If your mother dies, if you break your leg, if your appendix bursts, you're still going through those 5 days of decompression, whatever. So you need to be someone who can deal with that psychologically. Absolutely. Yeah. It's it's not like, I always sort of say, it's not like having a bad, if you do it for the first time and you don't like it, you've got a problem, because you have a bad first day at the post office, you can sort of hand your uniform back and
That's it.
And it's okay, but there is no escape. You once you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah. So how do you get fed? Do they put it in like a chamber and pass it through, or
yeah, exactly that. So there are locks basically, so air locks, helium locks. So just exactly that. So you can have a little lock which you can equalize to the outside world. And for food, we just get menu in every day, and you sort of tick what you want and send it back out, and then your food comes in on little metal trays. So I've had plenty of Christmas dinners with on a foil tray on my lap in there. And we have a team of we put 3 divers on the seabed, or 2 divers and 1 in the diving bell every day, but there's 110 people on board. There's a massive sort of support network of the marine crew, and then what we call the life support crew, who are obviously in charge of your gases, and making sure you don't die on that front, and then the humidity in the chamber, and all the rest of it. But also they're in charge of the day-to-day logistics of people living in somewhere, so they do your washing for you, and flush the toilet for you, quite literally. Literally. So it's
And what about communication with the outside world?
It's got better. It used to be hard. I mean, we can sort of talk on intercoms, and you do have a phone in there, but with the internet now, you can text a bit and stuff like that now. The internet, just quite the quality of the internet really is the defining factor. But it's hard to make a phone call to do something practical, like if you want to ring the bank manager, that can be pretty difficult, So you definitely need to try and get your life squared away before.
With the news, wouldn't you want the news kind of filtered? Because you're thinking of like human factors and that. If somebody is like got, hear some news while they're in the chamber, that could knock their concentration while they're going into to do the job and things like that. So would you have to be really careful about what you find out while you're in the chamber?
Yeah, potentially.
You can't do anything anyway.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's difficult. Yeah, now, I mean, back in the olden days, the only communication they had would be a fax or something outside. So they'd write a letter, and everybody outside would read it first and then send it off to your wife or whatever. Yeah. But nowadays with the internet, it's the same as anywhere else. You get your news straight away via text message. But it's definitely a thing. I mean, people, at the end of the day, you can be, if we're working regularly year round, you can be in those chambers 6 months of the year. So life goes on, and things happen. So, I've been in there plenty of times when somebody's parents have died, and but you're absolutely right. It's got to be managed to some extent. But there's compassion. There's if somebody's parent has died, then you probably wouldn't send them in the water. We would just decompress. A team of 3 come out, and they'd usually get a helicopter and take people home, for that. So, but something in between is difficult. And that's part of the job. you have to deal with the everyday stresses of life, which we all have, and arguments you might be having with people at home, or pressure, financial pressures or whatever they are, and particularly as it's such a microcosm of a place to live, these things all get exacerbated, I think. So again, you just need to be someone who can deal with that well, I guess, and switch off and get on with the job and do it safely. But and you watch out for each other. If you feel someone's in a bad place, then you maybe need to say something or help them out or do something about it, I guess.
Do you think there's a future in the role? Because with more and more use of robots and ROVs and AI and all this sort of stuff, do you think they'll use more and more of that, or do you think there'll always be a place for commercial divers doing the things that the robots can't?
Offshore, I think, long term, you're absolutely right. There probably isn't that place really. I mean, there is the remotely operated vehicles they use now are phenomenal. They can do very mind-blowingly intricate tasks. We used to cling on to the fact that there's quite a lot that the human hand can do and access that a robot can't, I guess, but that's becoming less and less the case. A lot of it requires design though. So, we work on oil wells, obviously, and manifolds and hydraulics and electronics subsea. And most of those have been designed, and badly designed often, just to be accessed by a diver. So they're not very well engineered. But, when they build a new oil field now, a lot of them are installed with that very thing in mind, that they can be maintained or tested, or have things, whole instead of just changing a bit of pipe work, they just change a whole block out with an ROV. And so it's that day is coming. I will see my career out, and maybe another generation, but beyond that, I think its days are numbered, and rightly so. Quite frankly, the safest, it's a dangerous business to some extent, and the safest thing to do at the end of the day is not put a diver in the water. So if we can get to a point where that's possible, then it's a shame for those of us involved, but it's probably the safer way of doing things.
We had Bobby Sholly on Friday, who's retired US captain, and spent a lot of time with naval recoveries work and things like that. And she was telling us she was at a conference last week, and the technology on show, she said, was really quite amazing to see some of the new stuff and the communications and everything there, where all this money's been spent, as she was saying. It's really quite amazing to see, where it's going.
Obviously I work for my sins in the oil and gas industry, and there's no shortage of money in that industry. So it's certainly from a diving perspective, you're quite lucky really, in I'm not saying it's not a consideration, but we're lucky in terms of the equipment we get to use. But even on that, with the robotic side of things, the ROV side of things, that really, I would say, probably at the forefront of all of that. So they use some fantastic stuff, and the stuff they can do now is quite frightening, really.
Do you remember your first dive, when you first? I was just trying to picture myself in your place. That when you qualified, and because do they take you down to shallow depths first, or do they say, right, you've got your ticket, we've got this job out in the Red Sea or the North Sea, and you sign up to whatever needs to be done?
Well, you qualify as an air diver first. So as an air diver, you're restricted to 50 meters, and you have to do so many. There's criteria, but basically do so many years doing that. So to start with, but going down to 50 meters on air, pretty rare in the commercial sense. You won't really. That's usually done in SAT because it's just more efficient. So you tend to be diving fairly shallow. You're doing the shallow jobs really usually on rigs themselves. I it was quite rare you went beyond about 30 meters as a commercial diver to start with. So it does happen. It depends where you are in the world, but effectively you are. That's it. You're open. It's open season really, and they're not really that mindful of you being a new diver. Particularly,
that's been exciting on the first one. You think, wow,
we're terrifying. I think probably more than exciting. But it is. I mean, it's kind of an intimidating place to be, I think. Certainly, because my first sort of offshore air dive. I mean, I'd worked on diving boats before, so I kind of knew what to expect. But I'd imagine if you've never done it before, it would be suddenly you're stood there surrounded by a lot of people. You feel a lot of pressure. It's a very expensive business. Our boat's something like £200,000 a day to rent, by an oil company, and all of a sudden you're the only pair of hands doing any work. So you feel that side of pressure, and you're underneath
literary pressure
in the middle of the night, looking up at this enormous oil rig and a rough sea below, and you're thinking, what am I doing here?
Was there times when you're like looking around and you're like, wow, I am under the North Sea here?
Yeah, I think at the start, I mean, that definitely wears off. But yeah, it's just, it's just nothing impressive about it, really. It's just another place to work, really. But it's definitely at the start, it sort of had a romance to it, and
See anything interesting?
Anything
interesting sort of you saw and you think, wow, look,
subsea. It's to be honest, because of where I work, certainly in terms of wildlife and things, it's not pretty, because drill mud and things like that. There's not a great bit of life. So we see, you've got a beautiful seal behind you, so we see a lot of that kind of thing, plenty of fish and seals, and with the odd whale, and
being inquisitive.
Yeah, well, the seals are like dogs, I find. You won't even know they're there sometimes. That focused. It's not like sort of scuba diving where you're there to look around and see things. You're there to work, so you sort of always tend to be concentrating on what you're doing. But that's happened to me a lot of times when I'm busy working on something, and I'll sort of glance to my right, and there'll be a seal, not looking at me, but looking at what I'm doing. They're sort of a bit like this. Yeah. But I've also, jumped out of the bell and landed waist deep in a seal as well. I've been dead for quite a while, so it's not always nice. But yeah, I mean, we've done, I've had to pick helicopters off the seabed in pretty ugly circumstances. And it's not, again, I wish I had better stories in terms of wildlife and things like that. I worked off the west coast of Africa and stuff. So you see, barracuda and, sharks in Brazil and things like that. But it's not always as pretty as you think. I worked in Trinidad, for example, and I've just been there recently, and it's all sorts of fantastic rays and all sorts in the water, but you can't really see them because it's so muddy, so you're getting bumped by big things all the time. But you just might see the odd big eye go past you, and you wonder what it is. But unfortunately, you don't see that much.
Yeah. So the North Sea visibility is pretty. Do you ever get any visibility when you're working in the North Sea?
Yeah, you do on occasion. I would say 80% of the time it's pretty poor. You go further north to the deep spots, it really depends on the seabed. If it's got a nice sandy seabed, then it can be beautiful. And I've worked in lots of nice places where there have been absolutely crystal clear water, and off Egypt, but you can work off Egypt, it can be beautiful, and then you can work in the Nile Delta and it's absolutely zero visit. I mean, as the scuba divers, it really depends, where you are. So it definitely has good days and bad days, but more often than not it's bad. You can't. That's the big skill of one of the biggest skills of the job, I think, is being able to operate and be productive in that environment. You do see a lot of divers, especially now I'm supervising, you see them go down and are really out of their element. It can be great when the going's good and you can see everything, but when the visibility gets really poor, it can really sort the boys from the girls, or the men from the boys, or the women from the girls, if you like. It can be really disorientating, and it's you always have to be conscious that you're not down there to have fun. You're down there to get to do work and get a job done. So if you can't operate in those conditions, you're not gonna make it, sort of thing.
Yeah. So you're well known for the famous film Last Breath and your incident back in 2012.
Infamous, I would say, more than anything. I wish it was something better.
So how long had you been doing sat diving before this incident happened?
I was kind of in the infancy of my sat diving career. I think I'd only been doing it, I think it was about a year and a half, I think, at that point.
Wow.
So I was quite young at doing it. This was 2012 this happened. So I was kind of relatively new to it. I've been diving maybe for I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years at that point as a commercial diver. But in terms of sort of the deep saturation diving, and it was just a kind of different world, really, particularly in terms of the types of work that you do. Then it was all relatively new to me. But I'd done at that point. I probably spent something like 8 months doing, literally in the chambers and working. So I was not a novice at it by any stretch of the imagination. But certainly compared to the two guys I was in with, it was early days of my career, if you like.
Yeah. So obviously we've seen the film Last Breath, and obviously we'd recommend people to watch it. But obviously it's a sequence of events, isn't it? And you are actually on the seabed, and there's a pretty raging storm going on up above you, and the boat loses control.
Yeah. So I mean, so there was pretty bad weather up top, but that wasn't really a sort of causal factor, if you like. That sort of exacerbated the situation. But yeah, I mean, basically, to cut a long story short, in order to work on the seabed, in one place, because obviously we don't just wear a scuba tanks, we have an umbilical, so we're attached. There's a big umbilical which goes down to the diving bell from the ship, and then that's split 3 ways to the 3 divers. So that very much is your lifeline. It provides you with the gas you need to breathe. It gives you hot water. We sort of wear loose fitting hot water suits, just pump they're pretty basic really. They're just it's almost like garden hose, garden irrigation system around them, sort of hoses with little holes in, and it pumps hot water around you. But once you've done it once, you never go back, because it's like being in a jacuzzi. It's very pleasant, way to dive, and you haven't got any of the sort of the awkwardness of a dry suit or anything like that, So that's a good way. So it gives you that, and then you have a power cable for sort of light and a camera on your helmet. So it really gives you everything you need to survive down there long term, but because you're attached to the vessel effectively, and also because you're working and using cranes and things like that, you need the vessel to stay in one place geographically. Yeah. So it does that using what they call a dynamic positioning system, which is just a series of references. It's we put beacons on the seabed. It uses GPS. There are what they call taut wires, which are basically weighted lines, and their sort of angle of inclination back to the ship tells the computers on board really what the vessel's doing, and all this information gets fed back to these central computers. And then it instructs various thrusters, big propellers around the boat, to counteract the effect of the wind and the waves and the tide, and basically hold the boat in one place, which it does really, really amazingly, within, a metre or so really of a geographical location in pretty bad weather. You can be on the seabed with, 20-ton load on a crane, and I can say, move 7 meters on 43 degrees, and it will very serenely do that,
Wow.
3 or 4 meter seas. Yeah, so it's a really good system, when it works, obviously. But that night, really, they just suffered a catastrophic failure of that system. It's a system that has multiple backups. It's never supposed to have a single point failure like it did, but that was a lesson in itself. So we had a failure of this, and it really meant all the navigation systems on the bridge went black, and they, exactly as you say, they just lost complete control of the vessel, and suddenly we're at the mercy of the wind and the waves, and so the boat just started to drift away pretty quickly, with us being dragged along behind it, really.
Yeah. So did you have any indication of something happening immediately while you were working away?
Yeah, so I was working with there was 2 of us in the water, Dave, Yuasa, and I. We were sort of tucked right inside a manifold, which was just a big set of it was a well manifold, I think. So a drilling template, or it's like a thing the size of a house, basically. We were in the middle of it, and we have an open line of communication to a dive supervisor, so he gives us all our instructions in an earpiece. And we heard they have alarms, so they have alarms when this system has issues. So we heard them in the background, but we hear alarms all the time, because you've got this open line of communication. You can hear there's O2 alarms up in dive control, CO2 alarms. They could be testing the dynamic positioning alarms on the other side, and we have a second diving bell, so they might be testing them. So you hear them all the time, and you don't think too much of it. So we definitely heard them and thought, something. But it didn't sort of frighten us, if you like. But then very quickly, our dive supervisor, Craig, was saying, you need to get out of the structure and get back on top and get back to the diving bell. And he didn't really explain why, but it was just something, I think, in his tone of voice, which told us, it wasn't a drill. There was something going down, but we didn't really panic at that stage. We didn't know quite how serious it was going to be at that point.
And then what happened? It started dragging you.
Yeah, so we're both inside. So we have you have about 15 meters of umbilical that comes out of the diving bell.
Yeah.
And the diving bell was sat in sort of one location, really, and our umbilicals were running straight into the structure that we were working in. And as we came out of the structure, fully expecting to see the diving bell sort of right in front of us, where we'd left it effectively, we came out to find it wasn't there, because the vessel was moving off in a sort of southeasterly direction, and our umbilicals instead of running out in front of us, were then draped. We came out to find them draped back over the top of the structure we've been working inside. So this thing was about 11 meters high.
Wow.
And in that situation, in saturation diving generally, there is only one safe haven. You can't go to the surface. That's instant death basically, for reasons you well understand. Your only safe place to go is your only breathable environment is a diving bell. So the only way you get to that is you follow your umbilical. So we both just turned to follow umbilicals, which meant climbing them to get to the top of the structure to see if we could see where the bell was. So we both did that. Dave was just to my left and I got to the top. And as I'm doing that, we preach what we call umbilical management in commercial diving, because that is your lifeline. So it's absolutely vital, but you take care of that all the time. You're always conscious of where it is. You're absolutely making sure it never catches on anything. I've got a bit unlucky, I guess. And, all these things were very easy in hindsight, but I had to use two hands to climb it. And when I got to the top, I've obviously left a bit of a loop behind me. And I've turned to really clear that to make sure it doesn't get caught on anything. But, really what happened, the vessel was moving away that fast, but that loop had just tightened on me and got caught around the transponder bucket was, but just a metal outcrop on the side of that, on the side of that structure. And it just looped underneath this tiny gap about an inch wide and stuck fast really. And that was the point. I hadn't really, we weren't thinking too much about it and weren't panicking too much, but I think the instant that happened, which was very, very quick, in the film it sort of belies it. I think they looped the footage a bit, it was really fast, and I knew straight away I was in serious trouble, real trouble, because effectively at that point I've become an anchor to 8,000 tons of ship, and there's only really going to be one winner in that situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a frightening thought, isn't it? It's just
it was I mean, I wasn't, again, I don't think you're really thinking too much. Just all you're doing is trying to save yourself in that situation. It's just, fight or flight, I guess. And it didn't break straight away, but the umbilical really just started to stretch and creak and pull away. And Dave, my colleague, was just trying desperately to get back and help me. And we had this little moment where we were just a couple of meters away and sort of looked into each other's eyes. But because he only had 50 meters of umbilical, he couldn't quite get to me. And he just got pulled away into the darkness, and I lost sight of him, and I could just see his light, and then that faded, and he got pulled away, and he was in no small amount of danger himself. Yeah, and then just stretched, and I remember thinking I wasn't really that worried about the umbilical strangely, because it was actually slipping around this gap, and the umbilical's attached to us by a sort of carabiner into a harness on our hip. So as it's pulling down, I'm getting pulled with it. And my legs were sort of splaying, and I remember thinking, first of all, well, my legs are going to break here, and this is going to be sore. And then secondly, I thought, well, hang on, it's slipping, and my umbilical's going through this very small gap. And I thought, well, if that keeps slipping, I'm going through that gap too, and it's going to be like being pulled through a cheese grater. This is not going to be a pleasant end. But then eventually it sort of, luckily in many ways it stopped slipping and just really caught fast, and that's when it really started to stretch. And then eventually, with a sort of gunshot sound, it snapped, and I sort of fell back down the 11 meters back to the seabed on my back. Yeah.
Blimey, it's almost like being in space, isn't it? Like with an umbilical cord and
Yeah. I mean that's a very flattering analogy, the old astronaut one, because you need to be able to tie your own shoelaces to go into space, don't you? Whereas that's not really a prerequisite to be a commercial diver. But it is. I mean, we sort of make the comparison sometimes that you're in a place it's quicker to get back from the moon than it is to decompress from. So you are. I mean, the biggest difference when that snapped really was that, you're really going from a world where you've got an infinite supply of gas. We keep gas on the boat, and there's probably enough in there to keep two divers on a seabed for a couple of months if you needed to, and you haven't got any decompression considerations because you're already saturated with inert gas. So theoretically you could stay down there for ages, but once that snapped, then you've gone from a world of essentially infinite gas to one where I have a very finite amount. So at that point I've had to switch on the emergency supplies, which is just I think it was a twin set, 2 7-litre bottles, I think it was.
So that's going to go pretty quick.
I was 91 meters down that night. So I think it's 14 litres. I think they had 300 bar in there, something like that. They were pretty full. So I think, if you watch the film, it sort of makes a big deal of 5 minutes, but actually, it depends. I don't know what kind of breathing rate calculations you guys use, but offshore IMCA use about 40 litres a minute, if you like, and in an emergency, which you probably don't really use, but that give you 9 minutes right there. So but basically not much gas left at all. But that's it. And then the only safe haven being the diving bell. So I hadn't, effectively had 9 minutes to get back in that bell. Yeah.
So you've lost light, you've lost your hot water system. So if you're just sitting on the seabed with getting cold.
Yeah.
In the dark.
Really, I don't remember the cold. Yeah, I tell the story like I feel like I remember everything really well. I have a pretty lucid memory of it all, but I don't remember getting cold at all, which is strange because I would have been.
But your adrenaline would be kicking in, wouldn't it?
I guess it must have been, yeah. And your body maybe just finds a way to switch off unnecessary inputs, almost. Because we've got like a valve, a quarter turn valve on the side of our hot water suits, because often being hot is the problem, too hot, so you can sort of dump some, and if you turn it right off, or if you turn your mates off for a laugh, they get cold in. It's pretty instant, and straight away you're freezing cold. I think it was about 4 degrees down there at that time of year. It was it was September or something like that. But I don't remember that at all. It's just I don't know. Maybe my memory's not as good as it is, or as you said, Ian, it's maybe just.
And then it's you're in the darkness, so there's no way of getting any light at all to see what you're doing.
Yeah, no, some lads carry a torch. I never did at that time. It didn't ever really seem necessary. But it was really most unbelievable darkness. Yeah, really, really pitch black. I couldn't even make out the shadow of my hand. We've got like a contents gauge, obviously, for our bailouts. I couldn't even see that, which in itself was probably
what led you to find it?
To find
the diving bell. What led you to?
Well, I never did. Yeah, I mean, I sort of got up off my back, and I'd probably fallen a couple of meters away from the structure I'd been on and working in.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm just thinking, I just need to find that structure, climb to the top, and see if I can see the diving bell. But it was so dark, I just absolutely become disorientated straight away. And it's pretty massive, but I could have very easily just turned and gone in the other direction. So I just got very lucky, really. I sort of put my hands out like I was going to the toilet in the middle of the night, and took a couple of steps and bumped into it. But even when I hit it, I couldn't see it. And I sort of edged my way along it. I remember being very scared that I would lose, touch with it, So I was sort of walking along it, feeling, and then I managed to find an old hose to climb up to get to the top. And that was a seminal moment for me, really, when I got to the top and, looked up, I think really fully expecting to see the diving bell or to see Dave coming back to get me or something like that. And I looked up and there was just nothing, it was completely and utterly black and dark, not a speck of light in the sea above me. And I think that's the point at which I thought, went from being scared to thinking, this is life threatening, I'm probably not going to make it out. I remember getting to the middle of the structure, sort of crawling along and gripping it, worried there was a little bit of current, worried I was going to get blown off it, and looking up and thinking, calming down a bit, and maybe roughly doing the maths, thinking, I've got just a few minutes here, and it's taken me quite a bit of time, and I've been breathing heavily to get up here. That even if Dave was right in front of me, ready to drag me back, already I'd be cutting it fine to get my head in and the helmet off before I ran out of gas, and with nobody there at all. It became apparent to me pretty quick that, that I certainly thought that this was it, but that was had a strangely sort of calming effect, really. It was almost, I remember sort of making a conscious effort to regulate my breathing, but that almost did it for me automatically, because I sort of, I won't say I gave up hope, but, you certainly thought, well, there's nothing I can do here, I'm absolutely powerless. I had no buoyancy either. The only buoyancy you have is inflated by the gas which comes down your umbilical. So you have a sort of pretty primitive buoyancy jacket on, but I had no way of inflating that, so even if the diving bell had been there, I couldn't have made a dash for it or done something reckless like made a dash for the surface. All I could really do was curl up in a ball and keep looking up and hoping. So that, strangely, I think really calmed my breathing down, and I'm sure the cold would have played a big part in that as well, just slowing all my functions down slowly but surely, but it was sort of strange, lonely minutes, obviously.
And fitness, I mean, I'd imagine you're very physically fit because of
No.
You're not? No?
You have to do diving, you have to have a certain level, but I wouldn't classify us as athletes, that's for sure. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would make the point that I'm absolutely not superhuman at all. You know, Dave, very, very fit guy. I might do okay, you know, but I'm certainly not. I'm not a fitness freak or anything like that, you know. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what helped. The body's just a remarkable thing, really. You know, I mean, so obviously, the story goes on that I do eventually run out of gas, and then I think there's something like the vessel actually ended up nearly 250 meters away from where I was, and they couldn't regain control of it. And it takes them, by the time they have regained control and come back to my position, I think it's something that's basically about 40 minutes pass between my umbilical severing and them getting me back in the bell.
Yeah.
42 minutes or something like that. So, if we say, let's say I managed to stretch it out to 10, 12, even 15 minutes, what I had on my back, there's still a big gap with obviously nothing to breathe. So, yeah, and I'm absolutely not a special specimen at all, unfortunately. It's just the remarkable that, what the human body is capable of tolerating and getting through, really. Yeah, but I don't really like the word miracle, but it does still to this day, it feels a bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and because of the gas, so the gas on your back, was that just normal air, or was it?
No, so we were 91 meters down, so we were breathing heliox that night. So I was breathing 6.9% oxygen in my mix that night. The breathing mix, but then on my tanks, I think it was 10%. So I don't know if you guys are into your partial pressures and that kind of thing, but I think that 10% gives you about 1,000 millibars at that depth, 1,010. So 1 bar basically. It's quite high. And I think, again, that was a massive factor, as we all know, if you breathe 6% on the surface, it's not going to do any good. But down there, that's pretty high levels of oxygen. And, we tend to operate in around the sort of 700 mark, I would say 700 millibar mark, generally when you're diving. That's what we aim for. And then you can go up to about 1.4 with your emergency supply, 1.4. I think that effectively saturated my tissues with oxygen, and I think I couldn't have had any more oxygen in my tissues. We've been in living in those conditions for several days as well. So I think that more than the cold, I always assumed it was the cold that saved me, but I think actually the truth is it was the gas that saved me. It was the fact that my tissues were that saturated with oxygen that the cells were able to cling on to life, really, and just have enough to and maybe a bit of residual in my hat that because I've gone unconscious, because I'm that cold, I'm barely breathing at all. I probably, maybe I'd be a breath a minute, and that's, it may be that I carried on breathing, down to a very limited level. We'll never really know is the truth.
No, you don't want to repeat it.
No, I'm not going to put an experiment in here.
No, so you're obviously here today, so you did get rescued.
I did, yeah.
They did get you back. So
how did they get me back?
Yeah, so they actually found you on the structure platform, is that right? And
so basically I was in the middle of that. And the sort of sequence of events was that they had lost control of the boat. They were struggling to regain it, but so they because Dave has only got 50 meters of umbilical and they're 250 meters away, he can do nothing to help me. But we had an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, one of my whatever's going to take my job shortly. He did me a favor as well. And that had quite a long tether on it, so they were actually able to get across to me with that, and they sort of had a beacon on me, so they sort of took range and bearing and were able to get the ROV back to me. So if you've seen the film, there's a sort of fairly harrowing footage, and that's the moment the ROV finds me in the middle of the structure, and at that point I'm already unconscious, which is why we'll never really know how long my bailout lasted, because we've only really got my say so, which is not trustworthy at all in those circumstances. But it finds me, and so at least they know I'm where I am, and that I'm that I still got a helmet on, I still have integrity in my helmet, which is very important. That easily could have been ripped off in different circumstances. And they were able to, eventually they were able to regain control of the vessel, bring the diving bell back over the top of me. They lowered it right down, and Dave swam down, and he sort of clipped himself onto me and pulled me back up to the bell, which if you've seen the film, you can see how difficult that was. He is a properly fit guy and very sort of strong upper body, and he says to me himself, if he hadn't sort of got me on the staging post underneath the bell on the last go, he would have had to drop me. He was just exhausted, and that bell was going up and down 4 meters or so, 5 meters almost, and you know, so it's a real superhuman effort, which obviously I never really thank him enough for. Yeah, but he sort of then fed me into the little hole in the bottom of the bell, and he just sort of fed me up into that. And Duncan, who'd stayed in the bell, was then able to take my helmet off and give me the kiss of life, really. Yeah.
It's amazing what the human body can achieve, isn't it, under stress, and when the power of life kicks in, and the desire to survive, what it can accomplish. It's very powerful.
Definitely, yeah, it is. And the point I was making earlier is that, and it's not because I'm special in any physical way, I'm just the same as anyone else. And yeah, it's entirely down to that, isn't it? I don't know what you call it, whatever you want, the human spirit, or we're just remarkable creatures, really. We all are, that we can.
And then you was back in the water doing it all again a few weeks later.
Yeah, that's just stupidity, though. That's
well, you've always got to get back on your horse.
Yeah, I think it was definitely part of it. Yeah, there was. So we were shut down by the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, for 3 weeks for good reason. While they sort of investigated and fixed the problem, or so they told us. And they gave us the choice to go back. So we went back as a team of 3. But yeah, exactly as you're saying, it was just, there's a big part of you just wants to get back on the horse. But, also, I think in those circumstances, I was quite, I was certainly younger than I am now, and a little bit naive, I think, to to what had happened, and subsequently the making of the film and things like that was highlighted to me. That it was probably a bigger deal than it felt like at the time, and certainly it was to other people. And you realise what an incredible effect it had on other people who had to witness it.
Yeah.
For us, I think it was probably just the best thing, just to get on with it, and you felt kind of disassociated from it. It's such a freak occurrence, and when I watch the footage of the twitching body and that kind of thing, I don't really look at it thinking, that's me. It seems I'm just wondering if he's going to make it like everyone else. It's bizarre. So you feel, I feel like a third party. So but I think it also took a long time to sink in.
Yeah. What changes did you make afterwards?
Well, we made a few sort of changes. We learned quite a few lessons that night. Nothing major. I mean, ultimately, there was the sort of the failure of the positioning system, which had to be addressed, and that was fixed, obviously. So we changed that. But from a diving perspective, in a weird way, it was a success story, really. Because we got out of it. We extricated ourselves from this seemingly impossible position. I say they extricated me, didn't they? So we took a lot of positives from it, really. And certainly from a personal point of view, we all felt a bit more confident, I think, in a weird way about what we were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we made little changes, like we just because it's a scuba diving podcast, I'll mention this because I wouldn't bore people with it normally. But yeah, so if you see in the film, I'm kind of twitching a bit.
Yeah.
So some people thought that might have been oxygen toxicity, just from breathing what was a fairly high partial pressure of O2.
Yeah, that pressure. Yeah.
For a bit of time. Yeah. So they reduced the sort of the legal limit for that down a bit. We added sort of lights to our umbilicals just so we get a better visibility of where
they are. That's a good idea.
Yeah. But probably the most fundamental change we made, which had been made at other companies, I have to admit at that point already, is we switched from tanks to rebreathers, certainly when we're diving deep. So these days we use a rebreather system.
Wow.
We use one's called a Cobra rebreather.
That's cool.
Which is, as you guys, I'm guessing you guys, do you do that kind of thing, rebreather diving? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so I've got mixed feelings. I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about it professionally. It's one of those things. Obviously, it's the future, and in the same circumstances, I think the rebreather we've got now would give me something like 45 minutes of gas.
Right.
But there's a lot of moving parts to them, isn't there? And there's a lot of there's some argument that you'd rather have 10 minutes of gas. You're definitely going to get to 45 that you would hopefully.
There's a point to that, yeah.
I'm probably doing them a disservice. They're very, very, very good, but they're still
all choice and opinion, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Would emergency glow sticks have worked? So you could have broke them and had a light.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the lads will carry torches and stuff, but yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, the bottom line is, if I could have seen or couldn't have seen, it wouldn't make any difference.
No.
There was nothing I could have done. What could have helped me? Maybe some, we talked about having packages of breathing gas down there that I could have accessed, perhaps. But the logistics of that are just too difficult because we move around all the time. So we've looked at a few things, and we have changed little bits and bobs that we learned that night. We've had, we sort of made a cultural shift in the way we do our drills. We learned a lot of lessons doing a diver rescue that night. We practice diver rescues all the time, which I'm sure you scuba divers do as well. It's something we do very regularly, and yet we still learned lessons that night. And we were saying to ourselves, well, why did it take it happening for real for us to learn those lessons? So we realized that we probably weren't doing our drills in a realistic enough fashion.
Because you can't equate for every single thing, can you?
That's just true. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Yeah, I mean, some things you really will only learn. Fundamentally, it all worked, and they got me back, and survived. So but there's always scope for learning, isn't there? So we tried to learn as much as we could, but ultimately we felt that the systems and the procedures and the training that we had in place worked really. So it was so it's a rare sort of happy ending story, I hope.
And that's the main thing. You always come home, and that's
but that's it. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, it's all well and good what we do, but we're all human beings with families, and that is the most important thing. It's no fun if people don't come home, is it?
No. And has the whole sort of incident and then the film changed you and your life?
Yeah, it's been. Yeah, I suppose it has in many ways. Yeah, I mean, it's like 11 years ago now that happened. And here I'm talking to you today. So it's never left me. That's for sure. I still get emails every day, and they made a film. They're making another film, believe it or not, next year. There's sort of Hollywood version being made.
Who's going to play it? Do you know?
I do. I don't know if I'll probably say it's on the internet. Yes, I probably could tell. It's I'm being played by a guy called Finn Cole, who's I've never seen it, but he's from Peaky Blinders. He's in Peaky Blinders. And Woody Harrelson's playing Duncan. So it's got
not Thomas Shelby's brother.
That's right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Arthur.
Yeah, he comes from the States or something. I still haven't watched it, which I shouldn't.
No, that can't be him then.
He's a keen diver. He's a keen diver, you see.
Doesn't come from the States.
Well, you'll have to get him on your podcast because he's a keen.
What's his name? Finn Cole.
Finn Cole. Yeah, he's quite a keen. So they had someone else lined up to do it. I think, but he wasn't. He couldn't really dive, So they've got. So there's him, and then Davey's been played by a guy called Simu Liu, who's a keen diver as well. He's a Marvel star. I don't really watch Marvel films either, but. He's playing Dave, and then Woody's playing
that's
staying in the bell.
Finn Cole, he was in Peaky Blinders for quite a while. He played I forget her name now.
He plays one of the brothers, doesn't he? From my understanding. He's very nice. I met him in Malta. They were filming in Malta, so I went across and met him. A very nice guy. Doesn't look anything like me. He's far looking, he's got a full head of hair, but there's a bit of artistic license,
So as a job, you're still in the commercial world?
So I do a bit of everything. So I still I stopped actual diving maybe 2.5, 3 years ago now. I took the decision to start supervising, but so I still work on dive support vessels. I still work quite regularly on the Topaz, which was the boat on the night of the incident. I just got back about 3 days ago. So I now sort of stay in the dry, but I wear a headset and direct the divers, and I try and keep them alive as best I can, and that sort of things really, which is great. I love it.
So do you still go into the chamber? Do you, or is this
no? I'm much more sociable. I stay on the boat. So I can have a cup of tea at night and go to the gym and walk on the heli deck. It's a bit more civilized. And that was probably for me. I enjoyed the diving and everything, but probably the living in the chamber got a bit tiresome. Some people will do it their whole careers, and that's fine. I've got colleagues who've done it well into their 60s.
Really, because that was one of my questions. Is there kind of a lifespan to the career of a sat diver?
I don't think so. No, people always assume there will be, but there really isn't. There was sort of some legend of getting bone necrosis if you did it too long. But I've never ever heard of an actual case of it. It's kind of because you're working on the seabed most of the time rather than swimming. We wear wellies 9 days out of 10. It's quite rare you put a pair of fins on and work mid-water. I mean, it does happen, but
must be a right pain getting the water out of the wellies, isn't it?
We get out and
that's right.
You get in there and all sorts.
You get all sorts in there, mud, grit. It's awful. They're pretty comfy, nice walking around a pair of wellies, like a bit of a spaceman on the bottom, and Yeah, but that means, you know, that a lot of the better divers, and because it takes quite a long time to get into it, you know, you have to do so many years in air diving. It takes a long time to get good at it, I think, as well. That
Yeah.
It's sort of, I would say the average age is, you know, well into sort of 40s, 50s, and quite a few in their 60s. And in a weird way, it's quite a healthy way of living. You know, although you're living in those chambers, you're out exercising every day and exercising pretty hard some days. You know, you're not drinking, you're
no pollution,
no pollution, good clean air, exactly, or gas. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, probably I would say the only health consideration is that you don't see sun. You know, you don't get any vitamin D, and and it's like also it's the opposite of altitude training. So because when you're in there for a long period, when you come out, your hemoglobin levels are pretty low because you're breathing quite high oxygen content. Your blood doesn't bother making as much hemoglobin anymore. So when you come out, you can suddenly be a bit short of oxygen and stuff, you know. So it takes a few days to go over it. But yeah, no, in terms of longevity of career, they just get very wily as they get older. The divers, you know, much more efficient at being in the water, and you know, they do things more efficiently. You know, they box clever and
no, that's and as recreationally, you know, outside of work, do you dive?
Not much. Yeah, I weirdly I used to go down for scallops and stuff. You know, I used to live. I don't live there anymore, but I used to live on the west coast of Scotland. I had a rib, and you know, you go and get some scallops and stuff when I had visitors. But I don't really, and not for any. How
do you like to cook them?
It's the old busman's holiday thing, isn't it? I suppose. But yeah, yeah. I also no one there to rescue me. Yeah,
a bit of garlic and some onions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't. Yeah, but I think now I've stopped. I'm thinking about getting back into it. Yeah, so I live down in the south of France these days, and so I've got the med there, so I might a bit warmer water and lakes and stuff. I'm thinking I don't even own any gear. I'm ashamed to say I don't own any gear. So I'll get some. Now I've spoken to you particularly, I'll go and invest and get on with it. Yeah, I'm probably a terrible scuba diver, you know, because I'm not. Well, all the difficult things about scuba diving, are not really involved with, you know, managing your decompression, having really good buoyancy control, all that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, where's my umbilical cord?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I have a lift to get up and down, basically, you know. You know, I can't run out of gas, so you don't have to worry about that, you know.
Can't wear your boots either, you won't get very far.
No, exactly.
So it's funny because we spoke to some mine clearance Navy guys, underwater clearance guys, and he didn't really like the scuba diving.
No. Oh, really? Yeah. No. Well, it's such a different thing, you know, and you'll find sometimes sort of commercial divers who sort of, you know, turn their nose up at scuba divers. But I've always been the reverse, you know. I think scuba diving is probably harder, and certainly more dangerous, I think, than what we do. You know, I think, you know, ours is so massively controlled, and you know, like masses of teams of people to put you down there, and you know, everything is risk assessed, and we have multiple backup systems. You don't have any of that when you're scuba diving. You know, you really are, you're on your own, aren't you? You look after yourself, and when something goes, so don't ever take that off anybody. You know, you be proud. It's a difficult thing to do, scuba diving, and it very much has its own dangers, doesn't it? So, and it's also wonderful, but it's also a wonderful thing where you get to see pretty things, and all the reasons we love the idea of diving, that wonderful sensation of being underwater and seeing things, which you do get on occasion in commercial diving, but mostly you're just lugging sandbags around the seabed, and there's nothing very glamorous about that. You know?
So when you're next back in the water?
I don't think I will be. So I don't dive in it. That's it. Yeah, I haven't dived in anger in about 3 years. Yeah, so whenever I get around to getting a set of scuba tanks, I guess.
Yeah. So you just work on a cycle, do you? Month on, month off, and
much time it's about that. Yeah, 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody thinking about commercial diving?
Yeah, as commercial diving is. It's just it's a difficult career to get into, and again, you'll get a lot of naysayers. But it's for me, it's been fantastic. You know, I've loved every minute of it. Really, it's been the making of me in many ways. Really, you know, it's given me confidence and shaped my life. Really, you know, it's been my whole life really for the last 23 years, I guess. So, I would thoroughly encourage anyone to go into it. You need to be somebody who genuinely is comfortable and likes being under the water, but also accept that it's maybe not quite what you envisage. It is not swimming with turtles and tickling them under the chin. It's mainly fancy plumbing, really, you know. And it's hard, it's pretty miserable. But it's also very exciting, you know. It's a very different way of life, you know. You know, as you said, I'm off half of the year, which is very lovely in itself, and you know, you definitely go home thinking I do something a bit different, you know, and I'm you know, you learn that it's not quite what you think. You know, you don't have to be a hero to do anything at all, but you feel, you know, feel some pride in what you're doing, I think. And yeah, so yeah, I would say go for it, but you know, make sure you do your homework, because as you pointed out earlier on, it's not a cheap thing to invest in at the beginning. You know, don't just go into it on a whim and on a hope. You know, do your homework, put some feelers out, and yeah, be very sure before you commit, because a lot of people think they want to do it and then find actually, but the reality is not quite they hoped it would be, and it's not really for them. You know.
Yeah, and you get to travel the world, I guess, as well. That's another advantage. Or you potentially can.
You do, yeah. But certainly when you're as an air diver, you do that. I did that a lot more. It was all over the world. As a sat diver, you do to some extent, but I mean, I've just been to Trinidad, for example, but there's nothing. Basically, it's just a ship somewhere else. It's not quite as exciting as it sounds.
Another sea,
It looks the same once you're on the boat, yeah. But yeah, definitely. We definitely had a few adventures over the years in far-flung places, which has been a great experience, and a big plus side of the job, definitely.
Yeah, good. Oh well, that's so if anybody's thinking about it, that's a good advice.
Yeah, get in there before the robots take over. Yeah,
absolutely. So what does get you out of your comfort zone?
Well, probably diving, weirdly, I would say. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm joking, really, but I think certainly at the beginning, that was not something, because I wasn't a diver. That was, I think it must do. Sure, that's a reason a lot of people do it, isn't it? Because it's that bit of adventure, and it does take you outside your comfort zone. Do you think? Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? You know, it's got a sense of adventure to it. So I would probably say that. Yeah, diving. I do quite a bit of public speaking these days as well, and that also takes me out of my comfort zone. I've sort of picked the two things to do for a living now that make me nervous. So I just like punishing myself, I suppose. Yeah, but we all do a bit of that, don't we? We like being outside our comfort zones a bit, don't we? So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, that's good, and it's good to share your story as well with, you know, for the good of other people. I suppose you can apply it in all different aspects of people's lives.
Yeah, definitely. It's I mean, I sort of tell it in all sorts of contexts. You know, it's not just industry or diving context. You know, I told it to pharmaceutical companies, zip companies, you name it, really. I think it's just one of those things where it's a story that resonates, because ultimately it's about people. You know, it's about, as you were saying, it's about people and their families and teamwork, and you know, all those sorts of things that are so important in so many, you know, businesses as well. So it's often a good springboard for conversation. It's just a ripping good yarn, really.
Yarn. So if you could take 3 people diving, either recreational or proper commercial diving, who would you take?
You warned me about these questions, and I've forgotten you were going to ask. I should have prepared. Okay, 3 people diving. Sorry.
Yeah, if you could take 3 people diving, they don't need to be divers, but the principle of taking them underwater, so they could be past, present. Who would you take and why?
All right. Oh, I know that. I know I do that because I've been asked. Yeah. Okay. It's maybe a slightly dull answer, but I've had this fantasy, and I've had it for a long time, of this little moment when I get to take my little girls scuba diving. So I wouldn't want some advice on that, actually, as to when you think is an appropriate age to take kids, because my girls are 7 and 3, so probably it's too young now, I suspect. But yeah, I have this little dream of, you know, they kind of know what dad does, you know, but they both love swimming. So I think it's, that's a little moment in my life that I really...
Swimming and snorkeling is good.
Yeah, snorkeling. Yeah, we snorkel now. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Certainly, the 7-year-old snorkels a lot and loves it. Really comfortable, which is good. A good sign. Hopefully, she's really comfortable doing that, and she loves being, when she swims, she's always under the water. Yeah. So yeah, I've had this little fantasy that moment that we'll get to do that. You know, the thing that I do for a living.
SEAL team.
Say again.
Paddy SEAL team is good as well. When they get your oldest would be fine, but once your youngest one gets a little bit older. SEAL team in the pool.
Okay, yeah. I don't even have a paddy. It's terrible. I need to get that rectified as well. That's the reason I don't go diving is I have turned up at a dive site on holiday before, and they've refused to rent me anything. So I've got these bits of paper, but no.
All these commercial tickets.
I can show them the film, you know, now. Yeah. So Paddy SEAL team. Okay, I'll look into it. Yeah. I think a colleague of mine sort of started taking his little girl in a pool about 8, and then maybe Paddy when you're about 10, 12. Would that?
Yeah. Well, my daughter's just done hers at 13.
13. That sounds like a reasonable age. Yeah.
You know, some people do take them younger.
Yeah.
I think it really depends. I think because it's not just the diving, as you know, it's taking it all in as well. You know,
Yeah, taking it in, not being scared. You want it to be a pleasure, and also you need to be able to react to an emergency, don't you? So you do need a certain level of maturity, I suppose, don't you? Yeah. So yes, when they're ready, the girls, and you say 3, did you? So I need a third.
Number 2, yeah.
I've got 2 girls. Yeah, 2 girls. I'm counting that as 2. Yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll take Dave with me as well, because I need rescuing occasionally. So it's good to have Dave Uasa. We'll have Dave Uasa to hand to save the other 3 of us. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
And he's an instructor. Perfect. Done. He can teach them.
There you go. Sorted. So last question. We're going to give you a billboard with you can put anything on it that you like, so a video, a picture, an image, a statement, anything you like, but the whole world is going to see it, and you're going to put some kind of message on it. What are you going to put on it?
Well, that's pretty deep. Okay. Well, I think it had to be something water related, wouldn't it, considering the present company? I would write something on a billboard like just simple. We are 60% water. That's what I'd write on a billboard. There you go.
Yeah.
We are 60% water. Tells its own story, doesn't it? Water's precious. We need to look after it. We need to manage it. We need to manage it. Look after it, which I'm sure is something you discuss in your podcast a lot, isn't it? So yeah, there you go. And I'll probably stick my website underneath it, just because I'm always after a buck.
Why not?
Yeah, no, they're great answers to the questions. And different ones again, because we always like guests saying different people they're diving with. Yeah, we've had some sort of really good answers recently.
Better ones on that, I bet. Yeah.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, it's good. Everybody's got a personal spin on it, which is the main thing. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So if people want to know more about you, where is the best place for them to follow you, find you?
Oh, that's very kind. Yeah, so I have a website which is just chrislemons.co.uk, and that's because I as I said, do public speaking more and more these days, which I really enjoy doing, and it's lovely to be able to go and tell people the story. So be very welcome to look on there. Yeah, and I can be found on Facebook and LinkedIn. Really, you can just look me up on there. So always glad to take questions and speak to people on any of those platforms. Yeah.
Great. So if any of our listeners to the podcast, they can drop you a message and hopefully
100%. Yeah, absolutely. You're very welcome.
No, that's been really good, and sort of great to get a little insight into the commercial side of things, and also your infamous incident.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to the film. We've watched it recently, and it's definitely a good one to watch. It's very gripping.
It's a bit of an emotional roller coaster, isn't it? For me too.
Well, hopefully a one-off, and that's
we don't want Last Breath 2, that's for sure.
No, well, it's been really good, and thank you for your time. And
thanks for coming on.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's always it's always nice to talk to nice people. So thank you for having me. It's very kind of you.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving us your time.
No worries, anytime.
So we'll drop you a message. So it'll probably come in. We'll give you a release date, and then it will be on the airwaves, and we'll do. If you're happy, we're thinking about doing our podcasts into a YouTube version now with a visual. So if you're happy for it to go out,
absolutely fine. Whatever you want, no problem. Do you want me to send you anything?
Yes,
anything like that? Or?
Another thing on my list. So we obviously do like thumbnails for the podcast, and then we do some social media. So any pictures you've got,
links and stuff like that. Okay, I'll send you all that. No problem at all.
That'd be great.
And then
no worries.
We'll probably be. I guess it might be about 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay.
Our schedule's working, so we're bringing them out every 2 weeks at the moment. So
okay, that's grand. And you're happy? I'll stick it on my sort of social media one as well.
Brilliant.
No, that's really good. Sort of mutual sharing. We love all that.
So, that helps, doesn't it?
And hopefully it'll generate some interest, and you get some people asking you some questions, particularly about the career, because I think that's a really important one, especially for girls listening as well.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, I wasn't sort of just saying that for the camera. Really, it really is a real problem. We need to address really. So
no, definitely. I mean, we speak to it is pretty male dominated generally, the diving world, but we've
Yeah.
spoken to some amazing girls,
Yeah,
what they do, and
well, I can see as a couple, as a girl. So that girl I was talking about, Dorota, she's if you ever fancy going down that road, she'd be good to get on board. She speaks very good English, and she's done TED Talks on it and stuff before. So
really?
so she's quite interesting. She's had a very interesting life generally. She does a bit of everything really, but yeah, she might be worth a chat.
Well, if you
I'll send you a link to it. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
because anything that sort of bangs that drum is great.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Chris. I'll let you get on with your
welcome.
evening. Thanks very much, and it's been lovely to meet you.
Thanks for your time, Chris. Thank you very much.
No worries. Nice to meet you both too. Yeah.
All right. Bye then.
Bye.
See ya. Take care. Bye.
Well, that was really good, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. No, it was good to
talk to Alex and David.
Yes. Yeah. And you can really hear the work that went into the production.
Loads. Loads. Imagine. Sounds like a massive, great big tank.
Yeah.
That they had there in Malta.
Yeah.
11 meters deep, and rightly so. 11 meters. It's a long way down. 11 meters.
And it's great to hear about the safety side of things, being, that's an element that maybe people don't necessarily consider. I know they'll have health and safety divers around, but, to actually sort of say that side of things is good to hear.
Really good.
And that things kind of were evolving and adapting as they were filming.
I can imagine, can't you?
No, don't want to do it that way. We want to do it this way.
I would have thought so. So, but it's going to be interesting, and hope it does well. And soon be out. Well, the end of this week, won't it?
Yes, it'll be great to see what the reviews are like and the ratings. On, is it Rotten Tomatoes? That's the film gauge.
It's usually out of 5, isn't it?
Yeah, and IMDb thing. That's
like that, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
say thank you very much for inviting us to to put some questions to them.
Yeah, and let us know what you think when you see the film.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for listening.